Last year, Steamforged Games picked up the War Machine license, and with it, one of my favorite paint ranges of all time, P3. And now they're adding 64 brand new colors to the range, which begs the question, does this make the P3 paint range the best overall range on the market, or are these 64 new colors just a waste of our money? Being a massive fan of their creamy, classic consistency, I was ecstatic when they announced that the P3 paint range was coming back last year. And honestly, the only gripe I had with the range in my original review was that the set was lacking some colors. There were some holes there, which meant that I had to go to other paint ranges to fill those. This second wave of 64 paint seems to be directed at filling those gaps and adding some fun new colors, as well as this magic in a bottle, they're pure metallics. I've been testing out the new 64 colors over the last few weeks, and I'm ready to give my thoughts. And while we do that, we're going to paint a model and see if these paints can hold up to a competition painting standard. I've already put a lot of hours in with the first wave of the P3 relaunch. My Visic Scour for Golden Demon was painted almost entirely with that range. And because my expectations are so high based on how well that first wave performs, doing a similarly intense project seems like it'll give me a good side-by-side comparison. I'll be painting the King of Thule model, a bust by Spira Mirables. I have a vision of this king sitting by a window during sunset, pondering the twilight hours of his own life and his kingdom. Very deep, very artsy, very probably difficult. Of course, I've never done a dramatic lighting scheme like this before, and I have zero confidence I'll be able to execute on it accurately, but there is no fear in this dojo, so we're just going to slap around some paint and figure it out as we go. After getting the model all prepped and hit with some white to block out the angle and intensity of our two light sources, I sketch out the window panes which will cast that shadow on our king. Now, to determine the placement and how these lines would work, I cheated. I used this light that I recently purchased to shine on the model and took some pictures with my phone, and then I could just sketch that out. It's not cheating, it's real-world references. Now, for the painting today, I'm going to use as many of the new Wave 2 paints as possible, with the occasional Wave 1 paint thrown in if it's a tone that I absolutely need. And the only non-P3 paint I'll be using for this entire paint job are a few fluorescents, just to mix in a bit to our highlights to boost up the vibrancy and add some luminous glow from that strong, warm light. Now, whenever I'm painting skin, whether it's on a Warhammer model, a larger scale model, or a bust like today, I like to have a handful of paints already on the palette, usually a blue, a red, a green, a yellow with my skin tone. This way, I can mix up a wide variety because human skin is very complex. There's a lot of subtle tones there, so I like to be able to grab what I need and just slap that paint around at the beginning. Now, that doesn't mean I know exactly where these different colors will go. It just means that I can grab different mixes and place them wherever I like as I'm working. Now, typically you want to mix in a little bit of your blue or green on the bottom third of the face, a little bit of your red on the middle third, and then oranges or yellows on the top third. That's a good rule of thumb for placing these kinds of colors on a human face. I'm just doing basic sketching at this point. I'm not worrying about any kind of detail work or putting the wrong color in the wrong place. Instead, I'm just focusing on building depth in the shapes through color. Two colors that really jump out at me in this new set are these two new skin tones. They're very neutral, they're very adaptable. I can make just about any skin tone I want with one of these two as the base, and they work really well to mix in other colors with them. Every single color I tested of these Wave 2 paints have that wonderful combo of great coverage and creamy consistency that I personally love in the P3 paint formula. So they definitely made sure that these act just like the original formula. Even bright oranges and yellows that typically don't have good coverage have such a heavy pigment load and apply smoothly that their coverage is amazing, and they build up really quick layers, which I'm really enjoying when I'm working on this skin. Now, the right side of our king is going to be cast in a softer, cool light, but we still need the skin to have that little bit of that pink skin tone in it. But I'm mixing in some dark blue, a little bit of off-white with our base skin tone to give just that hint of the surface color while bringing in the blue for the cold, soft, ambient light. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you, at this point, I am struggling because I've got a strong over-the-top light, I've got cast shadows, I've got another soft light from a different direction. We have a lot going on, and I kind of don't know where to go next. So I'm hoping I can just paint his beard right now, and then a light bulb moment will happen, and I will know what to do. This may come as a shock, but there was no light bulb moment. So I think I need to switch things up. Now, typically, I like to paint each section of the model to about 80 to 90% completion. Then I move on to the next section. But here, I feel like there's way too many variables going on, and I need to get a better picture of this entire piece before I start the refinement steps. So now, I'm just gonna start blocking in some colors, doing some basic work on the shadows and the highlights, but nothing complex at all, just so I can see how this entire picture is gonna look, and hopefully that will give me some more direction, and I'll know what to do. Basically, I'm just putting off decision making for as long as possible, in hopes for divine intervention. So while I block out these colors in hopes that I can find some way to pull out of the nosedive that is the wreckage of this YouTube video, I want to talk about something I find very interesting about this paint set, and that is what colors they chose for this 64 color set, and my thoughts on why. The original 100 colors in the P3 paint set were really light on certain tones. Pinks, purples, reds, oranges, yellows. Those colors did not give you a lot of options. And other colors, like their browns and their greens, had a ton of choices. And I'm really happy to see that they put a priority on balancing out the range. Now, no matter what color I grab for on the shelf, I have a ton of options. Some of them new, some of them very interesting, and some of them standbys. And it's not just that they added a bunch of boring tones just to check the box that they have 10 reds or whatever in this set. There are a lot of unique, non-traditional colors here. Ones that I would really only expect in a massive paint range like Vallejo, where they have 300 or 400 different colors to choose from. Which I think is really interesting because, as far as I know, this second wave completes the P3 paint range. They're not going to add another wave every single year. They want these 164 colors to be the whole range. And because I have so many favorite colors from the original set, it makes me think that there's going to be some new favorites that I'm going to discover in the new 64. And I'm also really happy that that high pigment load is still here with this second wave, which means they mix really well together without desaturating too quickly, which means my highlights and shadow colors will stay interesting. And I'm appreciating that not only for more intensive projects like working on Golden Demon, but also when I really want to knock out quick paint jobs for a unit or a speed paint, having those big jumps in interesting colors without all pulling towards gray is a great thing to have. Today's video is brought to us by Bamboo Lab, and by now you already know how big of a fan I am of my A1 printer. It helps print the terrain that brings my tabletop games to life. I've also gushed over how idiot-proof it is, which Lord knows I need. It works without fail due to its auto-leveling, auto-calibration, self-cleaning, and ease of use. But today I want to talk about something different and equally as exciting, and that's how this printer has aided me in boosting my creative process in the hobby. With their Maker World app, I get to browse through tons of free models, with more being added every day, and print out some awesome tools that aid me in my mini painting and optimizing my hobby space. Not only does it help me optimize my workspace based on my needs, but it also helps me find other great gadgets that I never knew existed. And I just get to print them and use them. It's pretty sweet. For example, this simple dry brush cleaner. These things can be a pain in the butt to get clean, but with this, a little soap and some scrubbing, they are as good as new. Being able to find amazing models or tools and turning them into real physical objects in just a few hours, resizing them to perfectly fit your need, printing them in any color filament, all at a fraction of the price of buying something in a store, is why I'm so glad I own an FDM printer. The next step I'm excited to take in my printing journey is to try out Maker Lab. That's their free software that makes designing your own printable gear, storage, and anything else you can think of as incredibly easy as possible, and no 3D modeling experience is necessary. So if you want high quality hobby tools as well as terrain for your gaming space, then why not try the 2024 CNET Award printer Bamboo Lab A1 and A1 Mini. You can check out the link below to see the sales that they've got going on right now. Thank you, Bamboo Lab. Now let's get back to the video. Now, not all of the new colors in this set are unique. In fact, some feel familiar, very familiar. It seems to me, and this is all wild speculation on my part, of course, that Steam-Forged Games has identified some tried and true, some staple colors from other miniature painting brands, and they've pulled them in, put their own little twist on them, so we get to use some colors that are often used in the hobby, and they're now going to have a home in this range as well. So if you like sunny skin tone, they have that now. How about dark sea blue, pale sand, Doombull brown, even one of my favorite paints of all time, armor brown, which previously was only available in Vallejo Model Air, which I don't even know if they make anymore, but this is my favorite color for all sorts of grime and grit and nasty stuff in your paint jobs, and it also works amazing for glazing in shadows. So this may not be exactly armor brown, but it's their own take on it, and it's freaking awesome. You know, I found myself really trying to figure out what some of the colors were. They kind of felt familiar when I put them on a model, but just different enough that I wasn't exactly certain. Kind of like getting to rewatch your favorite movie for the first time again. And after testing all 64 of the colors they sent me in these sample pots, I got the most important conclusion, and that was that these things act just like the classic P3s do. They're thick and creamy right out of the bottle, but not so thick that they ever obscure any details. They blend smoothly right on the model, so you can wet blend and achieve really amazing results in a small period of time. And of course, they thin down easily with just a brush full of water to a perfect layering consistency, and thin all the way down to a faint glaze or tint for even the most subtle of work. All right, we've got all of our colors blocked in so we can see the entire piece and help us make decisions going forward. And I'm realizing now that this might not have been the best idea of a model to paint. This is going to be more complex and pretty fun actually, but I realize I am not gonna get this thing done by the time I need to get this video out. But that's okay, just keep swimming. Now, I thought that by getting paint on every surface, it would give me more direction, but instead it just kicked my ADHD into overdrive and I can't focus on what specific thing I want to paint next. This is a problem. So I guess I'm just gonna keep jumping around to different sections of the model, following wherever my muse leads. And then, if something else catches my attention, I'll work on that and never finish any single thing. Sweet. And I think I'm having this struggle because the complexity of the lighting here makes me feel like I need to keep working every section up 5% at a time. So like none of this work feels like it's making any kind of progress. And if you've ever worked like this where you're slowly bringing everything up, you realize that it kind of looks like garbage until one layer of paint will come on and suddenly it'll start to pull itself together. So I'm hoping that that moment happens before the end of this video, ideally. I think I'm going to lean on the fact that the vibrant colors in this set really hold their own and cover really well, because I need to get some punchy tones in this model to really showcase that vibrant, warm light, and it's great because these paints can pull that off. I feel like the best place to really plant our flag in the sand on this strong directional lighting is with his red cloak, and I'm finally starting to sell this scene a little bit, maybe. Now my end game plan is to really pull all the warm light together from that window later on, so all those different surfaces can harmonize. But we still want to build those warm layers up on the underneath surfaces, adding a bit of warm tones to any one of our highlights, so we don't have to solely rely on those warm glazes at the end. Now there's one really important and valuable aspect to this paint set that I'm not covering today, and those are their brand new pure metallic range. And these things, which I did cover in a recent Warhammer video, are by far the best metallics on my painting desk or anything I really have used ever since the original recipe of the Vallejo metal color paints. If you're familiar with those, these will act very similarly, although they're not so watery. They have a thicker, creamier consistency, so they're easier to work with. So really, really high pigment density, really, really finely ground pigments with a ton of vibrant color in the metallics. As I'm pushing my highlights while trying to keep the vibrancy, I'm realizing that this model is going to take quite a bit longer than I really expected it to. And you know what? Some projects are like that, and just coming to that realization that this is a little bit more complex than I had planned is a fine realization. That doesn't mean you need to speed through to the finish line just because it's a little bit more difficult. Or you can also say, I'm just in over my head and I'm gonna find a path of least resistance just to get the model done while I'm still having fun. So I think I'm gonna call it an audible here. And what I'm gonna do is promise that there is going to be a second video in this series. One where I bring the King of Thule to completion. We'll focus on the really important things to really make all the blends work, make the colors come together, so you can see the final steps in this process. What's interesting is those final steps, while really important, and there's a lot to learn there, are often the sexy parts of a painting video. Those are the shots that make you say ooh and ah, but the things we showed in this video, the beginnings, the pulling together of colors and the defining of your direction and how to act on that are the kinds of things we don't often see in miniature painting videos, but they're often the bridge that brings us from I know how to start, I know how to finish, but how do I set myself up for success at that finish? And that's what we were working on today. So hopefully you got a little something out of what we accomplished in this video. So anyway, I hope you join me for that next video. Please subscribe if you haven't yet so you don't miss it. And maybe we can pull together these strong cast shadows so they can actually look realistic. Right now, they're way too stark, and I'll have to keep working on this and try to figure out how to bring this to completion so I can enter it in the Nova Open Capital palette. I want to thank you again for watching this video and your support. In case you didn't know, the YouTube algorithm has been thrown for a loop in the last 3 to 4 months, meaning on your homepage and recommended, they're starting to show stuff that are not the usual videos you watch. So you really, if you want to know the regular videos that you enjoy, you have to subscribe and you have to use that subscriber page to really stay on top of stuff. So I appreciate those of you that do that. I also greatly appreciate my patrons. You see some value in these free videos that will always be free, and you want to support me there. I've got a link down to my Patreon. You can see some fun rewards you get as a thank you for supporting me as well. So my final thoughts on this 64 color Wave 2 set from P3. These colors work as beautifully as the core set. They're a wonderful mix of fun, unique tones and standout go-tos that we've used from other ranges, but just in that amazing P3 formula. This pulls their full range to 164 paints. And as I said before, I'm told this will be the core range. There won't be any more big waves added. And I really, really appreciate that this set is now sizable, it's well-rounded, without being massive. And it's of my opinion that a paint range should have between 150 and 180 colors. If you have fewer than that, you're gonna have too many gaps in your paint range and people are gonna have to look elsewhere, or they're just gonna get frustrated by having to mix too many colors. If you have a lot more than that, you're just like, what's the point? Like, no one's gonna use all those colors. You're gonna buy 300 paints and not use 150 of them. So I really like that every color this way can have a purpose, can be well thought out, and it was added for a reason. And it really feels like now all 164 colors in this set were added for a reason, and I don't really think any of them are just throwaways. I do want to thank Steamforged Games for sending me over the 64 colors to try out and give my thoughts on. It is important to note that I am not sponsored by Steamforged Games. I do not make any money whether or not you use their campaign or buy their paints or back the game found. I know that I will be, because I want to add these colors to my collection in the fancy dropper bottles that'll go on my shelf next to these ones. But don't make your purchasing decisions just based on some random nerd on the internet. Find the paint set that works best for you, because it's most important that at some point in your day, you find time to slay the gray. I just may sit by the bay and eat some hay. What do you say?